Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is April 10, 2022. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast, I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. Thank God our guest today, Cheryl King, knows which buttons to push because we're all set and ready to go. Cheryl, where are you calling in from?
Santa Rosa, north of San Francisco.
It's an honor and a pleasure. The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
Breathing.
Oh my God, I love that answer. You know, Marcel Duchamp was at a cocktail party and the guy goes, "What do you do?" He goes, "I'm a breather." And the guy goes, "Hey, I'm a breather too. We have something in common."
Duchamp's pretty smart.
Yeah, I like conscious breathing too. So that was good. What's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
Reading.
Reading. You grew up a reader because your parents were reading on your own, or you sort of took their example and they told you to read?
All of the above.
Yeah.
My parents, when you would walk in the living room to talk to them when I was growing up, they would always pause, put their finger in their book, close the book on their finger, and then answer whatever question you had. And then when you left, that book would open back up again and they'd be looking. I fell down a flight of stairs in an airport in Seattle when I was 5.5 years old because I had a brand new golden book and we were flying to Alaska. And I was just walking and reading my book and didn't notice I had encountered a flight. And I fell all the way to the bottom. Obviously, so enwrapped in my story, I was limp, so I didn't have any broken bones. But I've been a major reader ever since I could put letters together. Yeah.
How cool. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Have one up on the world. Information prepares us, right?
That is good to have one up on the world. One up on the world. Is this need or want to collect information, gather information, more innate or more invented by humans?
Oh, I feel sure it's innate. I think it's in the DNA because it's how you make decisions, right? Do I want this? Do I want that? Will that hurt me? Will this help me? Only from the gathering of information can you put all those clues together and know such a thing.
Yeah.
So we gather information and just store it in there. And then, of course, when we learned to write, we found other ways to store it. But before that, it was stories, right? Yeah. I think it's
really good. Yeah. Cheryl, you really get what I'm after, and I love your certainty. Go get him, girl. You know, yeah, I'm certain on this one. Do thoughts create emotions?
No. Well, do thoughts create emotions? See, now I'm going to have to take that word apart. Do thoughts create emotions? Thoughts create an environment in which emotions emerge.
Yeah.
That's what I
see.
think.
Again, you get what I'm after. I want to psychoanalyze each word in each question. I want to play with the questions themselves because, you know, I can change the wording. After 40 years, there's a couple questions I've changed the wording because smart people like you told me. Oh, one person said recently, because I asked a couple at the beginning, is it more this or more that? She goes, the word more doesn't function in your question.
Ooh, that's a great response.
Wasn't that a great response? See, I don't mind that. I want to play with the questions. So that was good. Is thinking more innate or more invented?
Thinking. Well, you got to go all Bill Clinton on that one, right? What is the meaning of is, what the meaning of is, what the meaning of thinking is. If thinking is the putting together of observations and impressions and ideas, then I think it's absolutely innate. I don't think it's learned.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you would do it if you were the only person on earth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know what I think until I fill in the blank.
Rephrase it.
Oh, until I rephrase it. Wow, that's good. I've never had that. That's a
Well,
good answer.
that's impressive for me. I'm pleased with myself.
Yes. Cheryl, can humans think without language?
Yes. Wait, that I shouldn't answer so quick. Can they think without language? Yes, because you can develop an intention to do something without using language, and that is a process of thinking, right?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Chomsky said that a language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language breaks down? When language doesn't work, what do you do?
I use my body to both communicate and to gather information by observation, by good listening,
Yeah.
hearing and seeing mainly, but you can also smell and touch too, right? Yeah,
Hello.
yeah.
That was good. Yeah, recently one great answer too was, "What do you do when language breaks down?" He goes, "Group hug."
Now that is a very valid answer.
That's a valid answer, and I love it, especially after 2 years of hardly being able to hug anybody, you know?
It is really wonderful, isn't it? Touching again. I've been touching some of my students, and it just fills me with this feeling I barely know even how to describe.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
And that's that whole thing of fasting. We don't know what anything is until we're without it.
that's right.
If we just swim in this, environment, we we just take things for granted too much. So again, one of these stupid more questions. Your observations of humans in general, are they more feeling beings or more thinking beings?
Feeling,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Ah, no, why do you say that?
Because people feed themselves a lot of ideas that are either undigested or unexamined, and then they have feelings related to those ideas, and then they act on those feelings. And sometimes they should have examined those thoughts and feelings before they acted on them, because a lot of damage is done in the world by people who don't think about things before they do it.
Yeah. Wow. 2 questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. Is thinking a function of the soul?
I think that it must be.
Nice.
I can't think of any way I could prove such an idea, but I think it must be, because if souls, for instance, I've been watching Tyler Henry lately on Netflix. He's a medium, and Tyler speaks to us of, the other day he was speaking of someone who died at 5.5, and he said, she's older now, she has progressed. There on the other side, she is older and has progressed, and she was offering ideas and notions. So how could a discarnate entity offer ideas and notions if they were unable to think?
Yeah. Wow. Is Tyler Henry a documentary or it's fiction?
It is not fiction. It is Netflix. It is a reality show. And this guy is one of the most famous mediums in the world. It is really impressive watching Tyler.
Wow. I'll
Yeah,
check
you're
it
gonna have to
out.
check.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I was
Yeah, I
just
love.
watching an Alan Turing film this afternoon before our meeting here
Oh, really?
online. Yeah.
Wow. No, I like reality TV because my friend, you might know him, friend of Ann Randolph's too, Hank Rosenfeld, friend of Flash's too. He says, I was writing for reality TV. He was a writer for reality TV.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I felt that was like an oxymoron, but hey, what the heck? The second Alan Turing question is, can machines think?
and I happen to know what his answer was because I just saw it.
What? Wow.
Yeah. And his answer was he compared himself to the person who was asking him questions. He said, say, I am allergic to pollen, and say, you like chocolate, and I don't like to go to bed early, and you do like to go to bed early. We are both thinking, but we are not thinking the same. So that the process of thinking is not the same from one entity to another. Therefore, the process of thinking between two human beings not being the same, it might be also the same between a human and a machine.
Yeah.
Or we could say also a human and an animal.
Yeah. It's good. That's
Yeah.
good. Really good reference because you just saw it. Okay. Cheryl, do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Happiness. Meaning is a very slippery slope. People are always seeking for meaning, right? She said this to me, so this means that. Not necessarily. We often don't know what anything means. So I think to seek for meaning is trying to reach for something that may not even actually exist because it's kind of in the eye of the beholder and based on perception, which could be faulty.
Yeah. Is perception reality?
That's a tricky one, right?
You're like this woman. She goes, "You're trying to trick me." I goes, "Every question's a trick. Everything's a trick." I'm not
Yeah,
literally trying, but it is. Yeah. No,
it is a
that's
tricky question because
that's
if
a very
perception
tricky
is
question.
reality, and in a
Is
way, of course, it is because I can only know what I perceive, right? That's all I can possibly know is what I perceive. And then I put one and one together and I come up with two. But I could be in a flat land where 1 and 1 equals 75. I don't know.
yeah,
So perception is just a clue
yeah.
as to what reality might be.
Love it. You got good words. Perception is a clue. Now, one of my favorite answers is Coleman Miller, a filmmaker. He made a fake experimental film. I says, "Is perception reality?" He says, "That's all you got."
That's exactly right.
But
Yes.
I know a hero to me, a heroine, and the heroine to you is Jane Wagner and Lily Tomlin.
Oh,
They they
absolutely.
they wrote the great line, "Reality is just a collective hunch."
Yes. And Jane also had another great one too. Is this reality or is it the hash?
Um, so does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're detecting it, or are we actually creating it?
I think consciousness exists without a body. So I'd have to go for the not necessarily attached to the brain.
Yeah, that we're detecting it. We're sort of zooming in on it. We're not creating it.
No, I don't think we're creating it because that would say that consciousness is a chemical interaction. And I think it's more than that.
Yeah.
I think it's got to
What's
be.
It's gotta be, yeah. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Probably light.
Great poet Audre Lorde said, "You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools." Yvonne Rainer said, "You can if you expose the tools." What new tool do you suggest or gravitate towards? And just to set it up so you know, I set up some of the questions with cute quotes. You don't have to apply the quote. In essence, you're putting every question into the context you want to. So sometimes people say, "You mean a new tool to dismantle the master's house?" I go, "Well, you could say that." So this question's had a little change over the years because I'm just asking sort of what tool, and it can be new tool, do you gravitate towards?
I would suggest that the master's house that I am most interested in dismantling is the patriarchy.
Yes. Okay.
And the tool I think that is being used to dismantle the patriarchy is self respect.
Wow, that is a great one. Yeah, somebody said, "What new tool do you suggest?" They said intuition. But like that's not new. It's been around forever. Self-respect's been around forever. But that's the one you pinpointed, which was beautiful. Self-respect.
To dismantle the patriarchy? Exactly, because it is a lack of self respect that has allowed the patriarchy to persist for so long. It
Yes.
is culturally and socially supported, this failure to give women adequate respect so that they don't respect themselves either. And of course, it's not just women who support the patriarchy, it's men too, right? I mean, everybody supports the patriarchy, but a
Yeah.
lack of self respect will cause you to knuckle under to something that you know is not fair.
Knuckle under. Well, I'll tell you one tool to to reinforce your idea. On Rose Avenue, every day I ride my bike and there's a huge billboard and it says patriarchy, RIP, like really big letters. I'm like, that's a bold billboard. That's pretty cool.
That's right. That's right. I approve.
What new toy do you suggest or gravitate towards?
Well, I personally am a fan of technology. I'm mad for technology. I think that video is is one of the most effective changers of the status quo that I have ever encountered in my entire life. I'm talking about casual video, video like on your iPhone, video
Yeah,
like you carry around in your pocket.
yeah. We called it home movies in the old days, and now home movies you can make. That's like the guys who made Monterey Pop. They took it to the studios and they go, "It doesn't meet industry standards." It's like, what? You know, industry standards are so low now. And that's funny because I saw I like to go on YouTube and see people I'm interviewing, like just what do they have on YouTube? First thing you came up was your 1 minute video for your commercial for your left stage left studio. It
Oh,
was
cool.
so it was so real. It was just so in you. It was like what YouTube has done. It's just your face talking. You know, it's right in your face and you tell them this is what it is in 1 minute. We don't need more than a minute. Just lay it out. That I totally agree with you. I like
Yeah,
that toy.
we can get rid of the gatekeepers.
Yep. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Uh, it's amazing how often it occurs to me to wonder how much longer I'm going to be in this body. And I'm not talking about dying, I'm talking about being conscious. You know, consciousness is an unending thing, right? It doesn't stop. I was reading a book one time where the author brought up more than once the awful burden of consciousness.
Wow.
But there is a terrific burden that comes with consciousness, which is you can't get off the ride.
That is heavy. Now you can if you consciously breathe. If you
But
relax,
you're conscious. You're still
that's
conscious,
true.
right? Unless
Right,
you
but
die, you're
yeah,
conscious. And
yeah,
then
but
even you're
we're
still
on
conscious.
yeah, you're right, because when we're on automatic pilot breathing, and if you go and take a breath for a second, it sort of like slows you down. And then you almost like lose consciousness. That's funny. Oh, but that
Unless you
guy,
and join the universe, right? In one of those moments, right?
yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
oming at yoga once a week, I do that. But then that guy last week, he came out of a coma after 19 years, and he just sort of woke up, and it was like, whoa, everybody went, whoa, that's pretty heavy.
That's very heavy. Good God. I can't imagine.
So McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna and of the race. They're sort of broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions so that we can learn to cope with what we don't like about the inventions. So this was the main question McLuhan pursued, and I asked you, why do we, and when I say artists, I mean theater people, painters, musicians, all the art. Why do humans ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though artists are broadcasting them to us?
Because lack of awareness is comforting.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, I think that's one of the things that makes artists is we're willing to deal with the big questions. We're willing to not know. There's a terrific discomfort involved in not knowing. And a lot of people have no stamina for that.
Yeah. That's good. I love not knowing. It's like that's why I love this podcast name. I'm probably wrong about everything.
I like your podcast name too.
Yeah. Well, it's not mine. It's Rob Grant's. I just tagged onto it. But it's also Fireside Theater. They said everything you know is wrong.
That's right. Well, Fireside Theater are way ahead of their time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you more afraid? Oh, no. One more artist question. Do artists have moral obligation?
Yes. I think they do. I think
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
If you can see, if you see something, say something, right? It's one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Old.
Yeah. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
Yes. My very earliest memory ever was standing in the bathroom near the sink in Germany, and a good friend of our family was brushing her teeth. We were going to go somewhere, and she was like a giant. She was way, 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 way taller than me, even though she was probably 5 feet tall. And that sense of being left out of the important plan and only being a witness still lives with me. I was having to do whatever they did, and she was brushing her teeth, and we were going to do that thing. And I still remember standing there thinking, when do I get to be one of the ones who decides what thing?
Wow. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
A blessing.
Nice.
Because things pass away, but
Yeah.
memory keeps it omnipresent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me, please, within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, someone who had an impact on you, a role model, and what specifically, just briefly, was that impact?
My mother, as she became older and less able to do things, relinquished some control over. We all gathered together at Christmas time. It was one of the few times the family was together all together. And she eventually got to the point to where she could not be on her feet and cook for as long as it would take to cook a meal. And she eventually would sit in the living room in her chair. And then one night she called out to us and she said, "Girls, aren't you proud of me? How accepting I am?"
That's good.
And
You mean
she,
how how accepting she was of you guys taking over? Yeah.
yes, yes, she accepted it gracefully. She did not want to, but she did. And she called our attention to it. And I think that that level of acceptance, where you see yourself superseded and almost replaced in some ways, she no longer was able to get her value out of taking care of us physically. She had to let go of those things, and she let go gracefully. And that,
Wow.
if I can do that in my life, I'll consider myself successful.
That is a beautiful one. I think Alice Walker said, Mom, the greatest thing you gave me was that you showed me you were flawed. That's the greatest gift. And she was saying that so beautifully. So how many children in your family?
4. I have a sister and a brother, and now a trans sister.
Gotcha. 4 people. So outside your immediate family, same question. Someone who had an impact on you. It could be early, it doesn't have to be. And what specifically was that impact?
My teacher, Carol Fox Prescott, my acting teacher. I studied with her for 11 years. I was her assistant during a large part of that time. And as her student, I'm a slightly literal and logical person, and she would suggest to me, "Well, try this, try that," when I would get stuck in a scene. And one day I was struggling with her and not wanting to do what she had suggested for me to do. And she finally said, "Cheryl, are you willing for me to be wrong?" And I realized I was not. I needed her to be right. And I needed for what she was telling me to be the thing that would solve my problem so I could commit to doing it and then do it. And what I learned from that moment was that a good teacher is not going to be right. A good teacher is going to sometimes be wrong. And that good teacher has to teach her students that she's going to be wrong sometimes, and they have to take a chance, and they have to maybe waste some time, and they have to maybe take a direction or a note that doesn't work in order to get to the one that does.
That's applicable to everything in life. That
It was
relationships, and it really is a resonate. It resonates with what you learned from what you just articulated with your mom.
I think those are the big battles in life, don't you? The battles that are actually with yourself, with your preconceptions, with the things that you've decided you're going to be rigid about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not only to your people around you. Are you willing for me to be wrong? You're saying it to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you've got to be willing.
God. I like your goddess. I always go, there's no goddess. But it is like we want to say things with certainty. But I always say, well, suggest it. I suggest this. It's like, no, you gotta. That one, you gotta. That's a gotta. Were you raised a particular religion?
I was raised in the Evangelical church. Yes. I can't say that it took.
Yeah.
I left the church at 18, and I would not have gone at all if my mother had not made me. She was attempting to raise us up the way to be good, moral, decent human beings. My
Yeah.
father never went to church. He didn't believe in it. He said it was all a bunch of
Yeah.
bull. But mama thought it was part of raising good children. So she took us to church. Shortly after I quit going to church, my mother also quit going because it had lost its savor for her as well.
Wow. Do you pray, Cheryl?
No.
If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Well, my first response that happened in my brain is the only one that's shown up. So I'll give you, what took you so long?
You'll love this one. The guy goes, oh, God would say, I checked the records. I made a mistake. You're going back.
Oh, dear. I hope that doesn't happen.
Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I don't think evil exists. I think pain exists, and loss exists, and fear exists. And as a result, people do the things that we call evil.
Yeah. Boy, you used the words loss, pain, and what was the other word? Anyways, fear. You know what word? The big one, but you know what word everybody, I mean, not every, 80 to 90% of people go trauma. You know, you said loss, pain, and fear. I was waiting for you to say trauma, but you know, there's a lot of factors that play in, but it's interesting what words people choose. I appreciate. So this one follows with that. How do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'm going to set it up with a few modern thinkers' thoughts. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is how do you, Cheryl, advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I would suggest that Alan could use, this is arrogant of me to suggest that Alan could rephrase anything, but I would suggest that he could not call an enemy, but instead use the word opponent.
Yeah. Wow.
Enemy implies malice or ill will.
Yeah.
And I think when you make that assumption, you trap yourself.
Yeah.
Even if it's true.
Yeah. Well, that's American Indians say your enemies, or indigenous say your enemy is your best teacher.
And then when you move all the way down into Carlos Castaneda and the Yaqui Indian sorcerers, then you get a worthy opponent. And your worthy opponent, like Carlos's worthy opponent, the Bruja, is someone who is there to teach you. But you cannot throw away your soul in the process of trying to learn from them.
That is really, I'm going to look up the etymology on opponent. No one's ever told me that about that. You changed the word. So you learned that use opponent from Carlos?
Yes, from probably the first book was the worthy opponent. But the Bruja was his worthy opponent, and he had much to learn from her. Enemy is too freighted.
What's that word mean?
Enemy carries enemy has been imbued with meaning, right?
Freighted means imbued with meaning?
Oh, no, freighted meaning heavy.
Heavy. I got you. Okay.
Yeah. I've decided my enemy is A, B, C, D, E, and G, F, and G, right? Yeah. It may not be so. They could simply have an opinion that is contrary to yours.
Yeah, like Ram Dass said, I'm having a real hard time loving George Bush. It's like, just fill in the blank. You know, I'm having a real hard time loving Trump. It's like you could just, I have a real hard time loving Putin. You know, just fill in the blank. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin about 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
We go to a theatrical play to see a new angle on life. Ideally, the playwright, the director, and the actors have come up with one.
Yeah.
Waiting for Godot, for instance. How many people had thought like that before that got written? Yeah.
That's my favorite Beckett, or one of my favorite Beckett's plays. It lasts 30 seconds. It's a pile of garbage on a stage, and then a baby sighs and then cries, and then it ends. You know,
Don't you love Beckett?
that is
Yeah.
so cool. It's like, honey, that was a really short night out to the play tonight. Let's go eat.
That's right. That's right. Beckett challenged people all the time. That's one of my favorite. I like people who challenge. My sister said
Yeah.
early on in my life, Cheryl likes to shock old ladies. I do. I do.
So what, I mean, you do a lot. So I mean, can we sort of boil it down to, if I was at a cocktail party and I just said, "Hey Cheryl, what do you do? What do you say?" just off the top?
I thought about that question. I am a communicator.
Good. That's great. But the way you did it, I would say you started stand-up comedy, then you became a theater person, and now you're an educator. Is that sort of?
Sort of, but now I am also working as a marketer, as a social media person, as a producer,
Right.
um, and as a director. And so and I'm writing a novel. I'm nearly done with a novel. So
Nice.
I
You're
communicate
yeah,
nonstop in one medium or another.
yeah, yeah. No, that's good. But I mean, we could just say what first attracted you was your tipping point to go, I'm going to be a communicator for the rest of my life. That's a little too jarring. Let's just, I mean, you can do that because this is how you're one of those, whatever they say, hyphenated. You do everything, and that's good. But you have a focus, and it's communication. But let's say, what first? Because didn't you where'd you go to college to study?
Music.
You studied music in college?
Yes, I intended to be a choral director, but I ended up dropping out.
Wow. So let's just say, well, let's start there. What first attracted you to pursue choral in college? Who did you hear, or what was the tipping point to go, I'm going that direction?
It was the one thing that I did that was closest to, well, it was communication, but it was also it sung my soul. It made the hair stand up on my arms. It gave me the greatest joy of anything I did in my life, even more so maybe than reading, was singing. So singing
Wow.
was the source of most of my joy for a long
Well,
time.
who were you hearing growing up that kicked you over to that? Was it live? Was it on TV, on albums, tapes? What was the music you heard singing that made you go that way?
Um, I've always loved harmony of all kinds. So when we were in church and they sang hymns, one of the nice
Right.
things about hymns is that there's
Okay.
harmony. So
Yeah.
harmony, I think, makes us vibrate at a faster pace.
That
So
is good.
something about harmony that worked. And then when I became a teenager and started listening to rock and roll music, that was the time of the Beatles. Some of the
Right.
greatest music in the history of America, as far as I'm concerned,
Yeah.
happened when I was a teenager. So for me, music I was living in this tiny town in Western Kentucky called La Center. It had 900 people, so far away from radio stations, you couldn't get anything other than staticky country during the day. And I had very few opportunities to get any kind of artistic stimulation. So for me, music was about the only thing other than books.
You
But
mean live singing, not even listening. You
no,
weren't
I was singing in choir, yes.
right. You weren't listening. Yeah. But
Yeah, I
then
was allowed to. Yeah.
what was the comedy kickover? Then you went choral. Then did you go from choral to comedy?
No, I spent a while living in the world, working as a waitress, and then as a this, and then as a that, and then I was a jeweler in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I had moved to Albuquerque by that time, and then um, I discovered a show in town called Baggy Pants and Company, which a friend of mine told me about. And I went to see them, and it was vaudeville. And I loved it, and it was amazing. And then my boyfriend kicked me out of the house. He said he was going to change all the locks, and I didn't have any money. The bottom had gone out of the Indian jewelry business. And I thought, what the heck am I going to do? Where am I going to get the money to pay rent? And how am I going to move out? And my boyfriend was kind of not a very nice guy. So I needed to exit. And I drove past this club that said topless dancers, $10 an hour. And I walked in and auditioned. And I didn't know anything about topless dancing. And I wasn't prepared. And I didn't have on makeup. And I didn't have high heels. I didn't have a costume. But the guy said, no, that girl over there, she can loan you a costume. He was a heavy cigarette smoker. So I borrowed this Kmart costume and I danced on this dirty parquet floor. And I ended up being a topless dancer for a while. While I was there, I ended up making friends with a guy who went to see the same show that was at the dinner theater, Baggy Pants and Company, over and over again. And I loved the show. And it turned out there was lots of great comedy in the show. And while they were there, they decided to produce another show because they had to go to another town. And they said, you got another show? They said, we can make one. And so they auditioned people in the town I was in. And luckily, there was a shortage of talent in Albuquerque at the time, and they hired me.
That is a great story. So, did you grow up with any comic heroes? Like people
Yeah.
who
Jackie Gleason, Carol Burnett,
Jackie Gleason,
Carol
yeah.
Burnett, Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, Red Skelton,
Yeah.
Ed,
Yeah.
the Honeymooners,
Yeah.
the great
So
comedy of those years.
yeah.
Yeah. Great
So
comedy. when
that was sort of your way. You got into it through the back door.
I did. And see, that's where what they liked about me when I was a topless dancer was that I was funny. Body wise, I was okay. It wasn't bad, but I made them laugh. I made them laugh. And that's when I decided I wanted to be funny for money. Yep.
That's good. So a screenwriting teacher told me great art is great film, great theater is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process?
Well, I think you have to parse those two comments. You do not want to see the hand of the writer.
Right.
You want to see the intention in the character. The character's intention needs to be clear, or the character's motivation and drive needs to be clear. As for me, my intention is very much of what I do because I intended a long time before it happens. I make lots of late night plans.
Yeah. Wow. You really you really tore that question all apart, man. I got to work on that one. Well, they say that the journey is more important than the destination. Why do we have to name a destination or seek a destination if the journey is more important?
Are you familiar with the Abraham Hicks school of thought?
Tell me, no.
Esther Hicks channels a group of discarnate entities who identify themselves as Abraham. And the idea is Oh, great. I've just lost the question. Tell me this question again.
But is it you mean they're a medium? No, is the journey more, if the
Oh, yes,
journey is
yes.
more
So
important.
the
Yeah.
contrast is important. So we have to identify contrast. And this is an Abraham Hicks precept.
Yeah.
That our job here on the leading edge of reality, in a physical body, on the front edge of consciousness, kind of God knowing itself, is to identify contrast. So to identify contrast, I have to say, I am here. I wish to be there.
Yeah.
And that is essential for the process of the journey, is the there has to be identified. It is all about life and vibration flowing through you while you are on your way there. But a there must be identified in order to motivate the journey.
Yeah. No, I like how you word it, to identify contrast, because people usually go, well, you got, if you're not focused. But there was the flaneurs in Paris in the 20s, and they just sat at the coffee houses and talked and changed the world, Picasso or Joyce or whoever, and so they were called psychogeography. You can just wander aimlessly and still have epiphanies, but
Yes.
but you still probably wandering aimlessly. You still probably need to identify contrast.
Especially, yes. I mean, even if all he's doing is going, that's not the right blue. I don't know why it's not the right
Yeah.
blue, but it's not the right blue.
Yeah.
I have to find my way to the right blue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know which tool but you can name it. So McLuhan says that everything we invent extends some humanness. So knife and fork extends our teeth. The shutter in a camera extends our eyelid. Maybe religion or philosophy extends consciousness. What does the you fill in the blank tool extend for you? Because it could be, well, the writing utensil, because you're a writer. Well, let's go with pencil or keyboard. What does the writing utensil, whether it's a pencil or a keyboard, extend for you? What humanness?
What humanness? Well, it is certainly my ability to communicate quickly. I would
Yeah.
say it's the speed. For
Yeah.
me, having a keyboard, it greatly increases my distance, my
Yeah.
reach.
Yeah. That's a really good one, a reach. It extends your reach. Look at, when McLuhan said, they go, what does film extend? And everybody goes, the eye or memory. He said, no, at the foot, because you're traveling. And it's not, there's no right or wrong answer. But see, you said speed of communication. That was good, speed. But then when you said reach, that's the funny, Robert Browning says, our reach should exceed our grasp, or what is heaven for? And McLuhan reworded it, because I think his key was, don't just settle for aphorisms and think they're cute and they communicate, reword them. So McLuhan said, he took Browning and he goes, our reach should exceed our grasp, or what is a metaphor?
That's right. That's a very good wordplay and concept, both.
Yes. So Michael Apted's a great filmmaker. He died last year, and I asked him 40 years ago, why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast? This is when MTV was first coming out 40 years ago. Marty Scorsese says, I cut my films faster because of MTV. Most people don't know Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922, but it really flourished then. And Michael Apted said, because we've learned to take in information faster. I ask this with a bias. Can humans literally learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
Some humans may be able to. I think there are losses involved.
Yeah.
I think you lose the melody. I think rhythm counts for something. I think just like in music where there's a rest that you need them,
Yeah.
it's phrasing. Phrasing is everything.
Sheesh. You should be a theater producer. No, you're smart. Phrasing is everything. Well, no, that was really beautiful because the hidden question is it literally possible for humans to multitask?
To multitask efficiently, no.
Yeah.
To multitask, yes.
Yeah. Boy, you're my hero. You got it all down, man.
I do multitask a lot, but there is a fall off of quality,
Yeah.
guaranteed.
Well, see, you can admit that. That's the beauty is, this woman I interviewed a couple months ago, she says, I could tell she was checking her email during the interview. And she said, you can watch people's eyes because you look at even in their glasses, you can see, you can tell. And
Mhm.
and she said, and she did good. It wasn't bad, but she literally said, oh, I'm multitasking right now. I'm checking my email as you're interviewing me. She literally said it, but it is, most people say, you lose some.
Yeah.
So back to the creative process, I left this one out. Marcel Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. Okay, let's say writing your novel. When you're writing your novel, how much are you thinking of your reader? Are you thinking of your reader at all? Do they play a role in your creative process?
They do. Uh, I've been writing content for 45 years. When I became a stand-up, that was the first time I became a writer, writing for performance. And stand-up is one of the most specific and specialized kind of writings there is. It is specifically keyed to an audience because without the audience response, you can't do your job. Because a stand-up's job is not to be amusing or to be funny. It's to make the audience go, ha! It's a physical reaction that you have to get out of them. And if you don't get it out of them, then you aren't doing your job. So that was my learning about writing for others. In a novel, I have to think about the same as with a play. I have to create the points and let the audience draw the conclusion. But I have to lead them to a conclusion by having the appropriate points. If I skip some points, they could go off this way or that way and never get where I'm trying to get them to go. So I have to give them the right breadcrumbs to lead them on my path, which means I have to think about what they know. When I'm working with people on developing their material and they say to me, oh, but that's in there. And I go, no, I don't think so. I think that thought that you're having is in your head, but it didn't make it onto the page yet. That happens a lot. Yeah.
That's, I got to tell you this. This is a line I tell people, and people at cocktail parties goes, I've got to write that down. This is from studying James Joyce, but I just want to run it by you because it's similar. In my opinion, Edgar Allan Poe invented effects precede causes. He invented the detective novel, reasoning backwards. And it's basically, I'm only going to give you a little bit, and then you're going to fill in. Like you're what I would say the little bit is the right breadcrumbs. I'm just going to give you the right breadcrumbs. Then you're going to fill in the others, and then swoop, I got you swooped in. You're
That's
into the
exactly
event.
it.
And then he spawned the symbolists, the poets, who basically said, it doesn't matter what you say, it's how you want them to feel, the effect you want your poem to have on them. So they spawned, the symbolists spawned the rock poets, Bob Dylan, Patti Smith, Kurt Cobain, and and Jim Morrison. It's just how it doesn't matter what words. It does, but you know what I'm saying. And then that spawned Advertising and Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce. So it's really effects precede causes, which people go, what does that mean? They can't figure it out, but it's you have the effect before the cause, you know.
And you know what's really cool about audiences is they like both sides of it. So if you set up the breadcrumbs and you cause them to assume the conclusion, and that's going to be assumption A, when you get to it, if they're right, they're going to be happy that they were right. But you could also have misdirected them and surprise them, and they're going to like that too, because audiences like being surprised. So they like being right, but they also like being surprised. So if you do it artfully, you can win with both scenarios.
Yeah. You are smart. And so I want to go back to the word laughter. What is the function of laughter?
Sharing.
Wow, that's heavy. You know what? You probably know this guy, Gurdjieff, the Sufi guy.
Yeah.
He said, um, the function of laughter is the reconciliation of yes and no. So I think,
That's brilliant.
I think it goes back to your identify contrast.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because that's where the zest in life lives, right? And that's why misdirection works. That's why that's funny. Comedy is kind of like magic. It's misdirection. You lead them here and you take them there. People love that.
That is good. Okay, so let's stay on this for a second, satire. So this is a complicated question, but I'm going to ask it anyways, and I'll suss it out later because you'll probably have some mind-blowing answer for me. Can satire be destructive? In the quote I set it up with is Swift said he compared satire to a mirror in which people could see every face but their own. So it's how you define destructive, but I'll just ask it. Can satire be destructive?
It can cause harm. But I think those to whom it causes harm are people with something to protect or something to lose, something at stake. I would say satire can dismantle.
Dismantle, MENTAL.
Dismantle.
Yeah.
Dismantle. It can
Yeah.
it can cause things to be demolished.
Yeah.
It can put an end to things, but destruction kind of implies loss. Whereas you got to demolish a house to build a new house.
That is great. I might reword it because now here's what I have to tell you. Most people, I go, can satire be destructive? They go, yes, because if you do a cartoon in a certain country and they come and kill you, most people think death is wrong and bad. but my friend, right? We don't want to die because we did a cartoon. But my friend, he wrote for Robin Williams. He said, "Can satire be destructive?" He goes, "That's the job of satire."
That's correct.
Maybe I should reword it. Can satire be dismantling or no? I guess it's hard. If I say dismantling or demolishing, that it's too evident. They'll go, yes.
You're gonna lead them. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to really what I want.
Use the word
harm. Harm is a key word you taught me there. But maybe what I should say is what I think I've said recently is what is the function of satire? And you pretty much laid it out. That's what I should say is just what's the function?
Demolish.
Yeah.
Or at least to make people aware. Yeah. Ideally, if you make them aware of things, the next step will occur, right?
Raising awareness is a huge thing. How do you raise awareness? Yeah. Okay, so here's Ruth Draper, who I bet you know who she was.
Though I couldn't tell you exactly right now, but I know the name.
She was the one of the pioneers of the one woman show.
That's it. Yeah.
She did it, man. So here's her quote. I want to read to you and just get your answer to the question. The key is to bring the audience up onto the stage and into the scene with you. It is they who must give you even more than you give them in the way of imagination and creative power. Sounds great, but how do you do that?
I can tell you.
I figured you could.
This is another aphorism that comes, I believe, in this case from Sanford Meisner. Acting is behaving truthfully in an imaginary circumstance. So your job as an actor on the stage is to behave truthfully in that imaginary circumstance, so truthfully that the people watching you identify with you. And therefore, they put themselves in that imaginary circumstance that you are in and draw the conclusions that you and the playwright hoped they would.
That is good. Behave truthfully in imaginary circumstance.
Right. Because that's what makes people identify with things is the truth. When they see something that looks like the truth, they identify with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't want to go there, but when we saw Will Smith's face yelling expletives about the joke that Chris Rock said, we knew he wasn't that wasn't scripted.
That's right.
We could read his face. If he was acting then, wow. But Louis Buñuel, filmmaker, said, I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it. Any comment?
Truth is individual. So we can only find our truth. And even then it changes from second to second, right? So to say I have found it implies that it exists in a fixed state.
That's like McLuhan said, a half a truth is still a lot of a truth.
McLuhan's a very smart guy. You do him so much.
But all these truths in God, as you've taught me today, you mean they're going to change in a minute?
For instance, I was nervous about this interview an hour ago. I am having the time of my life right now. If you'd have said an hour ago, are you nervous? I could have truthfully said yes. Now, no.
But that's an hour. If they're changing every minute, I mean, I have like 10 epiphanies written on my notes, and I'm like, well, I don't know if they're still true now. No, that's why I take notes, because I go, wait a minute, I got to remember that line. What do you, Cheryl, this is so fun. I really appreciate it. What do you think the motive of the cave artist was? Not with anthropologists or Herzog put in his movie or whatever, just your hunch.
I think it was memorializing the incident.
Yeah.
Or the state of being, or the process. If it were the killing of a bison, for instance, memorializing the hunt.
Yeah.
This is the days of our lives, sort of thing.
Yes. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
That's apples and oranges there. For me, conviction. As a skill, and as a skill gained in life, the ability to compromise is a major one. Very, very, very important. But I think conviction is essential whether you are involved with other people or not. So you could be alone on a desert island and you would need conviction. Ideally, you would not need a tremendous amount of compromise.
Yeah. Beautiful. You know, two little things. I did this in at a film festival last week, and I did some of the more questions, and this younger lady, well, somebody said both, and I goes, okay, next. And then she goes, that's a cop out, which I thought was cool because of course it's both. All these more questions are both. It depends. But she was sort of on my side saying, is it more this or more that? You have to commit and say one or the other. And when you say both, she said it was a cop out. I thought that was cute. But my favorite was in 25 years asking. That was my first question to start out. What's more important, conviction or compromise? I didn't make it up. Christine McKenna did. Or she exposed it to me. And guy goes, well, it depends on what you mean by important.
Oh,
isn't that amazing? So he took it right out of the two keywords. Okay, so this is another one I've changed.
You were talking to there.
Say it again.
I was a smart thinker.
Yeah. No, he's a welfare lawyer. He's not a guy who helps people on welfare. He's a lawyer on welfare. But here's one I've changed too. But I'll tell you later how I changed it. Of these three elements, what's played the biggest role in your accomplishments? Luck, skill, and ambition. What's top, second, and third?
Luck, skill, or ambition? Ambition.
Number one. What would be second?
Skill.
Very good. So I used to say, is ambition based more on fear or more on joy? How would you answer that?
In my case, joy.
Wow. Because every 80% people go fear. But then, you know what? You know why I changed it? Because William Friedkin, you know, the guy, pretty good director, he said, in Hollywood, it's all ambition. It has nothing to do with skill or luck.
Really?
which I thought was funny, you know, but I mean, it's not necessarily true, whatever.
Well, you know, All About Eve is all about Eve for a reason, right?
What does that mean? I don't get that.
All About Eve, the movie with Bette Davis.
Yeah.
And ambition is how she got what she wanted. I can't think of the name of her, her assistant, but it was all about her ambition. Hollywood is very ruthless, of course. So ambition, I would say absolutely in Hollywood and in New York City. That's what makes New York City so great, is how many ambitious people are piled on top of each other in one place.
There you go. Beautiful. T.S. Eliot said poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Prose.
Nice. That is good. I'll tell you one favorite answer to a filmmaker in New York. I says, what language is your inner dialogue in? She goes, I wish I knew.
Ooh.
Isn't that
right? Probably for most of us, that's the answer.
No, I like answers like they go, my mother complaining.
I started to say profanity, but I thought, no, that's actually a smart aleck answer.
So two of my film heroes have this same feeling. Their mantra is ignore yourself. There is no self-expression. In fact, Cecil Taylor, a great jazz pianist, says, I'm just a vehicle and this just comes through me. So I know it's both, and it's a stupid question, but is art making more self-expression or more your vehicle for whatever culture or technology is dominant?
My vehicle for whatever culture or technology is dominant?
Yeah, or just or whatever. That's that wording isn't great. I've realized it's sort of like, are you more a vehicle, or is art making more a vehicle for creativity or more self? Well, then it doesn't. Yeah, no, it really is separating. Is it more self-expression or more you're a vehicle for your environment, which
There
could
we go.
be, yeah, environment is the word I should
My
use.
environment, yes. There we go. Because when I set out to make art of any kind, I am filtering through my particular colander all the impressions that I have gotten that have assembled themselves in a specific way that feels right and truthful to me, and hopefully an original idea, and then attempting to communicate that back. So
Yeah.
it is what I have received, processed, and put back out again.
Yeah.
That's what I think my art is anyway.
Yeah.
It's my attempt to interpret my impressions and give them a new shape.
Yeah. Really good show, because you help me. I really should throw in the words environment and surroundings, but it is, you learned that love of choral singing from doing it in the church. One of these guys I interviewed recently, he says, oh yeah, it's the technology or culture that's dominant. He said Missy Elliott learned how to sing from car alarms. So that was her environment. That was her surrounding. And then I always use all these drummer stories, like Ginger Baker or Cream. He says, where'd you get your drum sound from? He says, I was in London when they were bombing. It went boom, 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 boom. And so James Brown's drummer, he lived next to a factory and a train track. So he invented funk drumming, like, so it is interesting, but I should throw in those words because okay, the real hidden question of that one is, can art making be egoless?
Ooh, then you get into parsing out words again. Ego.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If ego means self-aggrandizement, not necessarily. Vincent van Gogh, for instance, was communicating his ego, damaged as it was. But it was not self-aggrandizement.
Right.
The ego is absolutely essential to help us make sense of the world. Otherwise, we'd just be a big ball of id, and that would never work. So the ego has to assemble all of this and make sense of it, and has to be involved in the production. So I think nothing can be egoless.
But it's interesting too. One person finally said, great art is egoless. And I think it's, again, how we structure words. I think they were meaning, if there's a universality to your art and a lot of people connect, then maybe it's because you're not letting your ego seep in. But again, there's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions. That's why I keep asking them, because I love how people, the funny part was, when we start discussing ego and id, I usually ask, was Freud right? That's where I have to give you a high five. I love people, because that's like, everybody says the Bible's right, that Shakespeare's right, Freud's right. We just take these things for granted, because we're brainwashed with it.
Yeah, Freud was very much a creature of his environment.
No, I asked this big hotshot Hollywood director that at a big screening. I says, was Freud right? And his film was all about it. He goes, that's beyond my pay grade.
Smart answer.
That was smart. But then about 3 questions later, he addressed it. It seeped in. Lewis Carroll says, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Yes. Well, again, parsing words, impossible. If you're going to get all technical, if it's impossible, then you can't really believe in it. But I've always been a very Alice in Wonderland kind of person. So I think the whole notion of impossible is, again, based on limited awareness. So I like to posit a world in which all things are possible and go with that one.
Yeah. No, you're like Sun Ra's getting so much press these days. New Yorker, New York Times. And here's the quote. He said, "The impossible attracts me because everything possible has been done and the world didn't change."
That's right. And, just yesterday I was reminding myself of one of those little funny aphorisms that you put in your office. And the one I was thinking of was, the difficult I do right away. The impossible takes a little longer.
Oh, impossible takes longer. I like that. Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
My impatience. If we could call being impatient a weakness, and
Yeah.
since it caused difficulties, it could be called a weakness. So my impatience is a strength in that I do not allow myself to be put off.
Yeah.
I continue to try. I continue to attempt to convince. I continue to rephrase in an attempt to get my point across. I continue to bring it up in a new way. I'm very persistent.
Yeah. That's good. Anger can be a productive emotion when fill in the blank.
It seeks to sweep away injustice.
Whoa. What caused matriarchy?
Love.
Oh my God. That is a great answer. That's beautiful. You create what you resist is a saying. Bob Goldthwait morphed it into you are what you hate. In fact, James Joyce said, it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve. And Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, thank God I'm an atheist. So how do you process this idea? Or what do you think of this idea? You create what you resist. I'm not saying you, Cheryl, but one creates what one resists. Any comments on that thought?
Yeah, because whatever you resist is what you're going to possess yourself with. It's what you're going to be thinking about. I don't want the way she did that. I don't like the way that happened. I want that to be different. So you're all possessed with what does not happen, what you don't want to be, right? Which means that that's what you think about, and what you think is what you create. So when you stop resisting, that also includes stopping thinking about it, in which case you are no longer creating it.
Yeah. Beautiful. How do you find peace of mind?
I wander around in my garden. I smell the roses, literally. I smell the honeysuckles. I trim the deadheads. I touch the grass. I listen to the bees.
Nice. That is beautiful. There's 5 Alan Watts questions. Really briefly, in a couple words, who started it all?
All that is,
Are we going to make it?
yes.
Where do we put it?
Where do we put it? In our hearts.
Who's cleaning it up?
Mom.
Is it serious?
Very.
Wow, that's heavy. I love the mom part. I get moms. Who's cleaning it up? I get that answer, mothers and moms. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Don't worry, it will get better.
Oh, beautiful. I know it works when either I tear up or the person I'm interviewing tears up. So that was really good. That got me. I teared up a couple times already. So thank you, Cheryl. That's something my mom taught me. She says, when you cry, you're not only getting an emotional release, you're getting toxins out of your body. Tears have toxins. Like, whoa.
Your mom's right.
Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
Over.
Why?
Because that's the most convenient for ripping.
If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
Not a nice girl.
They want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell?
Cinnamon.
They want to have a color of ink other than black on a few pages. What color?
Forest green.
Beautiful. If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed and what would it be made of?
Central Park, Carrara marble.
Right on, girl. That is proud. Cheryl, tell me something good you never had and you never want. So it's good, you never had it, but you never want it.
A happy marriage.
It's good, you never had it, and you never want it. That's good. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
Swerve. Whatever you
call it. Swerve is a good word. Tilt your neck. So you're missing. Yeah, that's good. That is a pretty smart answer. I don't get that often. I like this one's. Usually I don't ask women that. Sorry, but they.
I don't mind. I'm a comic.
I figured, Cheryl, you could take it. But this one person says, I wouldn't be in a situation like that.
Well, that's also a good answer. Yeah.
That is good. No, this guy last week, I said it, and I couldn't get the second part. If you were in a vat of vomit, he goes, stop right there. He wouldn't even let me say the second part. I actually learned it from a really wise altacocker on Venice Boardwalk. And it's basically a metaphor for life in a way. We're in a vat of vomit. People are throwing bags of shit at our face. What are you going to do about it?
Well, it really is. It reminds me of that old joke about this, the kid who he gets a closet that's full of crap. And
right.
Yeah. And he goes, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere. That one. Yeah.
That's a great joke. That's very similar. That's very good. So when did you shift? I mean, you probably already told me this, but I'm going to ask you this question about education because you're an educator. I mean, now you're doing like more producing or whatever, you tell me, but this thing about the difference between education and entertainment, and this is what McLuhan said, so just would love to get your response. It's misleading to suppose there's any basic difference between education and entertainment. It's like setting up a distinction between didactic and lyrical poetry on the ground that one teaches and the other pleases. However, it's always been true that whatever pleases teaches more effectively. So I've sort of boiled it down to Is education pleasing us, thus teaching us more effectively, or is entertainment pleasing us, thus teaching us more effectively? So again, there's a lot of words to debate there, but I think you got a sense of where.
Yeah, I have thoughts on that, which is there are two types of ways to bring an audience to you. One of them is to send the message to the audience, to try to push it to them. The other is to be magnetic and draw them to you. A good teacher is magnetic. A good teacher doesn't go with the funnel and pour the thoughts into the brains or say, you must learn X, Y, Z. A good teacher is not a pedant. But you also, if you are a good teacher, and I am currently teaching 2 acting classes, and I've been teaching for 24 years, never stopped. Teachers have to listen, diagnose, guide, strategically inform, and strategically withhold enough information to keep a solid base under the feet of their students so that the students can get to that aha moment on their own.
Yeah.
So I would not call good teaching entertainment.
Yeah. But where did you learn that?
By doing.
By
watching
doing.
pictures and doing it myself. The first time I taught, someone came to me and said, would you teach me how to do that? And oddly enough, she was asking me to teach her how to strip because she knew that I had been a topless dancer. And she was freaking out in an intimate scene in acting class. She said, could you teach me how to strip? Because I keep freaking out and I keep crying. And so I taught her how to feel strong and beautiful as she disrobed.
Wow, that's
And
heavy.
I became a teacher at that point. So I was asked to teach. And my teacher, Gary Austin, who founded the Groundlings, by the way, in LA,
Yeah.
Gary said, a good teacher happens when the student asks you to teach them. That's when a teacher is made.
That is good. Yeah, that's funny. Do you know Pat Olesko, the performance artist in New York, costume artist? When I was going to college at University of Michigan, she was Pat the hippie stripper in Detroit, but she's doing like, you learn, you make money. And one of my highbrow professors had her come in and dance naked in one of my classes. And I went, man, my parents are getting their money's worth. But it was like, it was more, she learned that as an art form, almost back to the words like you were saying, like vaudeville. And,
Right. And the thing is, when you are the one without clothes on in a room full of clothed people, you are the one with the power.
Oh, yeah. They're wearing us. That's exactly what McLuhan said when he went to the first topless bar in San Francisco. He said, they're wearing us.
Yes, that's right.
That is amazing. Yeah. So just a couple more. Boy, this has really been fun. I don't want it to end. Okay, so
I know, I can't believe we're nearly at the end. I've had a wonderful time.
Thornton Wilder, great playwright, 1928 said, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for 90 minutes, Cheryl. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this, but what's it really all about for you?
I want to live life so fully and freely that at any given moment, I could die and say it has been enough.
Yeah.
And I have so far.
Yeah. That's really inspiring. Did you get that more from the way your parents raised you or more on your own?
More on my own, unfortunately. My
Yeah.
parents were victims of victims, Depression era kids, raised poor. We had a lot of limitations. They loved me. That was true and solid. But I have spent a large part of my adult life recovering from damage that was done during my upbringing, not necessarily by my parents, but by the whole
Yeah.
thing. You know,
Yeah.
the 50s weren't easy on any women, just to be
Yeah.
truthful.
Yeah.
But, I feel like I've made the most of it. I think this was a very crucial time in reality to be alive and aware. I was part of the big second wave of feminists, and I think that we have, in a way, changed the world. And I don't think I've wasted my time.
Beautiful. Tell me one way feminism succeeded. Just my, not, it's not one way it succeeded and one way it failed. And maybe fail's not the right word. What was one of the major services or victories in one of the, I don't know what word I
Gaining power over our sexuality was the victory.
Yeah.
That was the victory. The way it failed is connected still to the same, which is that the powers that be still wish to define us as baby makers and use our reproductive rights against us to control us. That is a place where we have failed.
Yeah.
But we own our own bodies now.
Say it again.
We own our own bodies now, and they cannot put that back in the box.
That's good. Beautiful. Yeah, my mom, I'm again so proud. She raised Roman Catholic. As soon as the pill and birth Planned Parenthood started, she was there. She was working at Planned Parenthood. And it's like, hey, you can't do that according to your church. She goes, dude, this is like, this is what I want to do, But I want to ask that question, and words are, if I say that you think that would be an okay way to say that, because I could say, how has feminism succeeded and how has it failed? Is that not a good wording, or should I say it that way?
You could say what goals have been achieved and what goals still remain.
What goals remain? That's good. That's a question I learned. I go, what questions remain unresolved for you? That's good. What goals remain? That is good. Thank you so much. In fact, this question I stopped asking, and should I stop? I mean, I'm really consulting you now. What's the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside? I stopped answering it, man. People go, I won't answer that now. Well, and I want to keep asking it, but I understand why they don't want to go there. So what do you think?
You're going to have to acknowledge the large gray area that we have now discovered has existed all along, but has never been suggested, which is the non-binary crowd. I think that we are all people with different sets of physical attributes and different temperaments, but there are gentle, kind, loving, deep men and hard, rude, aggressive women. So nobody has a monopoly on any attribute, I think, based on their gender.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to word that all one way. And then I used to ask, why do women live longer than men?
We don't spend so much of our lives angry, perhaps.
That's good. Okay, two more and then we're out of here. Boy, this is too much. Okay. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Acceptance of individual predilections, appetites, temperaments, orientations. Even though the right is pushing back very, very hard on it, and in some parts of the world as well, I think that cat is way out of the bag, and it's not going back in. So
No.
I think people are going to get to define themselves. Identity politics are real, and I think identity shift is a permanent thing.
Yeah. It's good. Okay, Cheryl, last question. What gives you the most optimism?
Dreaming.
Wow, what a word. Dreaming. But, put in context, you mean literally when you're sleeping, dreaming?
Yes.
Oh, really? That you mean literally?
Yes, really dreaming. When I'm dreaming, I am not possessed by ideas of you can't, or you should, or you must not.
Yeah.
So there's nothing to stop me.
That's good. But I have to add one then, because I left this out, is that's how McLuhan broke the Finnegan's Wake Code by James Joyce, saying artists dream awake. Because see, Joyce took an old folk song, Finnegan's Wake, and took the apostrophe out because it was about a guy, his name is Finnegan, in his wake service. That's the song. But to name his book, he took the apostrophe out and he said Finnegan's Wake, meaning all you Finnegans wake up. Like everybody should wake up. Like wake up, and be aware of what books doing to us, what radio's doing to us. And so this is what McLuhan learned was art, and it's not to be elitist, but everybody dreams while they're sleeping, pretty much. We create these scenarios, but artists also dream while they're awake, dreaming awake. So that's the other part of your answer is you're literally saying what gives me the most optimism is that I can dream while I'm sleeping. But in a way, you're dreaming while you're awake also with all these projects.
Yes, with my novel. My novel is one big long dream.
Yeah.
80,000 words worth of a dream. And it flows out just like wind. It just, there it comes. So it's a live dream that I'm capturing with my keyboard.
Yeah, live
Anything
dream.
can happen.
When's that due out?
Well, my first draft should be complete by the end of June, which means hopefully my second draft would be complete by July. I would like it to get done soon because it's about a girl in Arkansas who wants to get an abortion during the time of COVID. And it's turning out to be perhaps very timely as topic matter.
Wow. Well, Cheryl, let's do this again real soon, especially when your book's out. We'll have another discussion, and it's surely been truly enlightening and fun, and I sure learned a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I enjoyed every single minute of it. Thank you so much.
Thanks to Flash for connecting us.
Yes,
okay,
indeed.
I'm going to hit the end button, but I hope it never ends.
Me too. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.